Losing time, I'm fading fast. I just wanna make it last. Try to let go of the past. I close my eyes, embrace the blast. Sleepless nights and headache stack. Restlessness to hell and back.
Hey everyone! When you think of a small performance tablet, what would you actually use it for? Let me know below. A few years ago, this category was basically ruled by the Lenovo Y700 and iPad Mini, but now more brands are joining the fight. Today, we're comparing two of them, the new OPPO Pad Mini and the updated Redmi K Pad 2. Both cost the same, but their approaches are surprisingly different. So which one makes more sense in real life? Both units are retail versions, so these results should closely match what buyers will actually get.
Big thanks to my tech partner over in China for providing this footage. I really appreciate the support in making this video happen. Hey everyone, Stella here from techiestreet. If you're into staying updated with the newest gadgets, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you don't miss any of our latest tech content.
Starting with design, both tablets now feature a clean, minimalist look. On the back, there's basically just one camera, a flash, and the logo. Our two units are purple. OPPO calls its color Mercedes purple, while Redmi calls it electric purple. Which one would you pick? OPPO's purple is closer to the iPad Mini's shade. It's subtle and can even look slightly silver gray under certain lighting. Redmi's version is much more saturated, brighter, and more vibrant. Both use a unibody metal design, but weight is where you immediately notice a difference. The OPPO weighs about 276 grams, compared with roughly 351 grams for the Redmi. In one hand, the OPPO feels noticeably lighter. On the Redmi K Pad 2, the power and volume buttons sit on the top and right side. There's also a shortcut button that activates power mode when held. You can customize it for AI or screenshots, making it somewhat like the iPhone's action button. OPPO takes a different route, placing the power and volume buttons on the short side. The layout isn't identical to the iPad Mini, but it's pretty close. By default, OPPO's volume buttons are slightly farther apart. Rotate the tablet left and up stays up. Rotate it right and the controls reverse. Want iPad-like behavior? Just enable adaptive button orientation in settings. The controls will then adjust automatically. For biometric unlocking, both the iPad Mini and Redmi put the fingerprint sensor inside the power button. OPPO uses a 2-point fingerprint sensor instead, so Redmi is slightly more convenient here. But once we look at the front, OPPO takes a major lead. The Pad Mini has an incredibly thin 2.99mm bezel on all four sides. Combined with the rounded corners, the screen looks incredibly clean. Unfold it and it almost feels like you're holding a large foldable display. The Redmi still uses an LCD panel. Its bezels are already thinner than the iPad Minis, but flexible OLED tablets still look noticeably more refined. Technically, LCD can also achieve very thin side bezels, but for evenly balanced bezels, a slightly thicker top and bottom, like on some Lenovo Legion devices, can actually make more sense. Now let's talk brightness. With a full-screen white test, the OPPO Pad Mini was incredible. Across 6 areas, average brightness exceeded 1600 nits, making it the brightest tablet we've tested so far. The Redmi also performed strongly, averaging around 1000 nits across the same 6 areas. That makes it one of the brightest LCD tablets. On paper, flexible OLED still has an advantage, but in real-world use, the gap isn't as huge as those numbers suggest. Why? OPPO's 1600 nit mode has strict limitations, especially with white, light-colored, and blue content. You can hit that number with a white background in the photo album, but third-party apps are another story. We tested Weibo, WeChat, Bilibili, CapCut, and Cool App. Maximum brightness was around 1100 nits, with middle brightness near 880 nits and the lowest around 660 nits. On the Redmi K Pad 2, Bilibili reached about 590 nits, while the other apps were around 1070 nits. For everyday display use, small tablets have 3 key advantages over OLED. First, video playback can feel smoother, especially HDR content with Dolby Vision. Second, OLED pixels can turn completely off for black areas, potentially saving power. Third, OLED can theoretically deliver an almost infinite contrast ratio. Both tablets also support 120 Hz refresh rates, so scrolling feels smooth. But when scrolling through news feeds, LCD often shows less noticeable ghosting, making motion appear cleaner. And this difference can become even more obvious in winter. OLED also has another advantage. It can be thinner and lighter, which is especially useful on compact tablets. But LCD isn't without strengths. The Redmi K Pad 2 keeps its 3K resolution from the previous generation, with over 400 ppi. Because its LCD uses complete RGB and purple pixels, text can actually appear sharper than the OPPO Pad Mini's 2.5K RGBS layout. Redmi also uses pure DC dimming, meaning there's no screen flicker. That can make long reading sessions more comfortable, especially with novels or comics. And not every conversion is perfect. DC dimming involves continuously adjusting the backlight brightness, which can lead to color shifts. In the past, many other manufacturers said they would use DC, but ended up switching to PWM, which also has the habit of combining high-frequency and low-frequency dimming. OPPO has an expert mode that uses pure DC dimming, which supposedly can reduce color shifts at low brightness, but we haven't tested it yet. We also tested OPPO's flicker control. At high brightness, it uses LEDC, while lower brightness uses 3840 Hz high-frequency dimming. Our measurements showed flicker only past 0.4 at an extremely low brightness of around 5 nits. Above 30 nits, SVM stayed below 0.1. That's an impressive result. Unless you're highly sensitive to flicker, OPPO's control is better than many OLED smartphones. Finally, viewing angles. At moderate angles, both tablets control color shifts well, but at extreme angles, the OPPO tends towards blue-green, while the Redmi shifts more towards yellow.
Another thing to note, LCD brightness drops more noticeably when viewed from wider angles. But these tablets aren't just for gaming. Many people use them as portable e-readers, and both offer dedicated reading modes. On the OPPO Pad Mini, reading mode is found under Display and Brightness. You can choose a pastel effect or black and white mode, mainly changing the color saturation. Redmi puts its reading features inside Eye Protection mode. It adds a full color option and lets you customize the protection range. Want an even more paper-like experience? Turn on Paper Texture. Combine it with black and white mode, and the screen looks surprisingly close to a newspaper. Now, gaming is probably the biggest reason to buy a compact performance tablet. Their metal bodies handle high performance, while the smaller size makes two-handed gaming much easier than on an 11-inch tablet. The Redmi K Pad 2 uses the flagship Dimensity 9500, while OPPO uses the mid to high-end Snapdragon 8N 5, so naturally performance should be interesting. At 1080p maximum performance, the Redmi averaged 59.7 FPS with an almost perfectly flat frame graph. Power was 9.3 watts, and peak temperature was about 41 degrees Celsius. Unfortunately, OPPO is different. Its maximum default rendering is only 840p. Even at 1066p in small window mode, frame rates weren't completely stable. After around 12 minutes, it would occasionally lock to 50 FPS before recovering. Average performance was 57.2 FPS with 8.5 watts of power and a peak temperature of 45 degrees Celsius. Thankfully, the hottest areas are around the center, so the parts you actually hold don't get particularly hot. And despite the differences, Genshin Impact at 1080p runs extremely smoothly on both. OPPO averaged 59.9 FPS, basically matching Redmi. But here's the interesting part. OPPO used around 6.8 watts compared with just 5.1 watts on the K Pad 2. CPU scheduling likely explains the difference. In Rage mode, Redmi's supercores handle much of the workload, frequently reaching around 3.35 GHz. The performance and efficiency cores also run more aggressively. Switch to balanced mode and the average FPS stays at 59.9, but power drops to only 5.8 watts. Here, the supercores remain around 1.4 GHz, while the performance cores take most of the workload. On OPPO, balanced mode uses roughly 5.1 watts. Its CPU frequencies constantly rise and fall depending on the workload, occasionally reaching 3.72 GHz. Interestingly, actual gameplay power is almost identical to performance mode. Now let's move to lighter games like Honor of Kings and PUBG Mobile. Both tablets support up to 144 FPS in Honor of Kings and 165 FPS and 144 FPS respectively in PUBG Mobile, matching their maximum refresh rates. Both also let you switch the game to a 21:9 rectangular aspect ratio. But there's a catch. Because of the wider tablet aspect ratio, full-screen gaming can sometimes show less information than a smartphone if the game isn't properly optimized. We also tested 20 long-distance applications in both landscape and portrait modes. Overall, both tablets performed very similarly. There was one notable difference with Bilibili. OPPO's App Store only offers the i7 Pad version, so we tested both tablets using that version. OPPO has specifically optimized Bilibili's homepage for tablets, with proper landscape and portrait support. Redmi, meanwhile, has optimized Ctrip's homepage, giving it a denser layout. Personally, I use Bilibili far more than Ctrip, so I hope Redmi improves Bilibili support soon. For overall large-screen optimization, though, ColorOS currently feels stronger thanks to its regular yearly updates. Its panoramic virtual screen can run 3 apps at once, dividing the display into 3 sections. You can even adjust window fonts, making it much more useful than simple floating windows. For example, you can keep WeChat open beside a guide and switch between them naturally. The desktop also feels polished. Rotate the tablet and icons smoothly move into position. Large folders and widgets align nicely with surrounding icons. The widgets themselves are also very similar to the phone versions. By comparison, Pen Pose feels much weaker on large screen optimization. The phone's side app bar is missing. Even worse, the large document folder is still just 1 by 1, smaller than the phone version. It's hard to tap accurately, and the folder doesn't align properly with nearby icons. Overall, it feels like the larger display hasn't received enough optimization. Finally, let's talk about ecosystem connectivity. Both tablets support smartphone screen mirroring, app relay, sharing, clipboard synchronization, and communication sharing. If you often carry a compact tablet outside, pairing an OPPO phone with an OPPO tablet or a Xiaomi or Redmi phone with a Redmi tablet is generally more convenient. And the reason is simple. You can share the phone's connection without creating another hotspot just to get the tablet online. Now, let's talk about the speakers. The Redmi K Pad 2 has dual 2016 speakers with Bose tuning, while OPPO uses two 1217 speakers, and the difference is obvious. The K Pad 2 sounds much better, especially in the bass. We've also included an audio sample, so listen with headphones and judge for yourself. Haptics are another big difference. OPPO's flagship phones usually have good vibration motors, but the Pad Mini has none. The K Pad 2 gets dual 0815 EXO linear motors. Typing feels surprisingly satisfying, sometimes even better than many smartphones. Some games also support vibration effects for hero skills, adding extra feedback while playing. Now, ports. The OPPO Pad Mini has one USB-C port with 5 gigabits per second transfer speeds. But when gaming horizontally, its position can sometimes get in the way. The K Pad 2 gives you 2 USB-C ports, one on the long side and one on the short side. That long side port is much more convenient while gaming and charging at the same time. But there's a catch. The long side port supports USB 3.2 Gen 1, while the short side port is only USB 2.0, so choose carefully if you transfer large files. Now, battery life. After 5 hours of 1080p video playback on Bilibili at 200 nits, followed by 3 hours of 120 FPS Honor of Kings, the remaining battery was 16% on one tablet and 31% on the other. The K Pad 2 has a larger 9,100 mAh battery, compared with 8,000 mAh on OPPO. Yet OPPO can sometimes be more efficient during multimedia use, especially video playback. Why? Those large black bars around videos can save power, and because OPPO uses OLED, dark areas consume less energy. We tested power consumption at different brightness levels. With a pure white screen, OPPO actually used slightly more power than Redmi at both 300 and 500 nits. But switch to colorful or darker content, and OLED becomes much more efficient because individual pixels can reduce their power usage. LCD works differently. Its backlight stays active regardless of whether the screen is white or colorful, so power consumption remains more consistent. Both tablets support 67-watt charging. After 15 minutes, OPPO gained 8.58 watt-hours, while Redmi gained 9.41 watt-hours. Based on the battery percentage shown on screen, reaching 100% took roughly 81 minutes on one and 74 minutes on the other. So that's the core comparison. Both 12GB plus 256GB models officially cost the same, but after testing them, it's obvious they target very different users. The Redmi K Pad 2 stays focused on gaming. You get a flagship processor, 9,100 mAh battery, dual X-axis motors, 2 USB-C ports and better speakers. Under heavy workloads, it delivers stronger performance, smoother gaming, and lower temperatures than OPPO. Its 1100 nit LCD is also a rare choice for anyone who specifically prefers LCD on a flagship platform tablet. But LCD has compromises. The bezels are wider, the body is thicker and heavier, and the overall design feels less refined than OPPO. Software is another weakness. SurgeOS doesn't match ColorOS for large screen optimization. And then there's the OPPO Pad Mini. Its biggest weapon is the flexible OLED display with ultra-thin 2.99mm bezels on all four sides. The front looks cleaner, more premium, and has a higher screen-to-body ratio. That advantage becomes especially obvious with HDR and Dolby Vision content. Overall, the OLED display delivers a more refined experience than the LCD panel. The slimmer, lighter body is another huge benefit, making OPPO much easier to carry. ColorOS also feels more polished than HyperOS for large-screen interaction, with smoother animations and stronger large-screen optimization. But performance is where OPPO falls behind. The Snapdragon 8 Gen 5 handles games like Genshin Impact well, but more demanding titles like StarCraft reveal the gap compared to a true flagship platform. Its peripheral hardware is also less complete. You don't get the same speaker setup, there's no vibration motor, and there's no fingerprint sensor. So, which one should you choose? It really comes down to priorities. Imagine combining OPPO's OLED display with Redmi's cooling system and adding a Snapdragon 8 Gen 5 class processor. That could be the ultimate compact performance tablet. But there's one problem. With RAM and flash storage prices rising this year, a tablet with that kind of hardware could easily start around 5,000 yuan, about £448 in the UK or $741 in the US. And that brings us to the end of this comparison. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button and subscribe for more tech reviews and comparisons. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye!